to the deceased. No? You guys can go find behind the file. Check it out. Okay. Hello, everybody. We're just making sure I can be heard. Everybody. My dad dropped me off at college in 1980, orientation. It was raining. I looked at him. He said, "Well, what are you waiting for?" So that's what I just thought in my mind. It's a strange time because here we are and we all know each other, which in some ways is a beautiful thing. There's not a lot of explanations or insight that I can offer. The best thing about today is to be kind to one another, to comfort one another, and to celebrate a fine man. To those here and to those far away, because I know there are, such as Uncle Morty, Daniel Spiegel, maybe someone even in Japan, I don't know. Whether you're listening or not, he's there in your heart. We are here to honor and celebrate the life of HB, to reminisce and to laugh, to cry, and to comfort each other. Because then I would be remiss, though, if I didn't mention this particular time in history, this moment, this pandemic, this president we live under, these protests going on for equity and justice. All of these things are relevant and were keenly in my father's mind. I never heard him swear and get as angry as I have in the past 3-4 years. I had to turn the TV off and say, let's do something else. My dad had an interesting struggle between who cares? Relax, Barbara. And ethics and selflessness. My dad embodied that struggle. Enough, woman, sea hag. The other day he was offering me yet again some money to survive in the camp business. He was always careful with that. He made me earn it. He made me discuss it. He wanted to know, how much is your electricity for the year? I don't know. You should know that. The next time I came back, I knew it. But just last week, when I didn't have money to pay some debts, he said, "Yeah, let's take another 40 grand out of that money." I said, "Well, I can't do that. You have to tell Sam about it." No, I authorize that. I just go take it. That's it. So I don't think it works that way. I'm going to have to talk to them, of which I did, and it didn't work that way, but that's the way it was. They called him. He authorized it. It was done. My dad's moral compass comes down to what is right and proper and safe and respectful Therefore, in this strange time, this time that some might say is an awful time to die, and I say it was the right time, because it was, please be mindful and not project your values onto others, and to withhold judgment regarding others' behavior. Please communicate with each other and be kind. Be considerate when you approach someone, anyone's home, anyone's personal space. For this ceremony, this celebration will uphold the principles of my father, and I ask everyone to wear a mask and keep social distancing. I ask this to honor my dad, because he liked things smooth. He didn't want people to get excited. Of course, he did get mad at Scott and Barry at Rosie's wedding for what they wore, but he passed through that. He didn't argue about silly things. And to wear a mask or not to wear a mask, or to sing with a mask or not sing with a mask, is irrelevant. So we will do it because it is right. And thank you to Cynthia for that. And Mariah. Let's not keep a cloth barrier to let a cloth barrier keep us apart. Jerry? It's a tradition for the United States of America to present a flag to the family of a veteran. Now, my dad in 1945, as all of his friends entered the military, he signed up for the Merchant Marines. He thought maybe it would keep him out of the war, or he was a leader, and he went up to, I believe it was the Northeast, and he made it there for a while, until I don't remember what the problem was, but he decided to go into the 11th Airborne Division of the Army. As a paratrooper, they paid an extra $50 a month, and you had to pay for your own shoes, so $75. I always got the economic analysis of things. And he was there, got training in Pascagoula, Mississippi, on the coast. And he served in the Hokkaido Occupation Army in Japan, where my favorite story is, I think he got in trouble for a craps game or something, and he had to stay on base for the weekend. So he turned it into a business by washing everyone's clothes in the shower. I said, well, how'd you do that? How'd you get the soap? Oh, I just used shampoo. I put on their clothes, I washed myself up, and I dried it on the line. Well, how much you make? Oh, I made a few rubles. That was my dad. Positive outlook, making something out of nothing, whether it's food or a day like this, which will be a good day. So I present this flag to our family, just as we received one from Uncle Donald before, and we will put it to good use. Well, as you guys know, I shouldn't be touching that. When you come up here, we will do our best not to touch this microphone, but I think everyone can hear me all right. I've become a teenager here, or at least a millennial or a Gen X. I'm getting schooled all the time by my staff. So I'll be reading my words off my phone here. I didn't have time to write it, but actually this works quite well. What's that? Oh, we were supposed to do a song. I didn't get a program. I introduced Caleb Ford, a fine nephew.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose Oh, closer? Am I okay? Am I good now? Louder? Is this good? Okay. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. What profit hath he worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can fail to find work which God hath made from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also, that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. And it is the gift of God. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God seeketh that for which men strive. And moreover, I saw under the sun, the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every purpose and for every work. I said in mine heart, after the speech of the sons of men, when they prove God, and see that they themselves are beasts, that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. They all have one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. All go unto one place, all are dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goes downward to the earth? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to what shall be after him? If I had to describe my grandfather in one word, he'd be generous. Sorry. During the last couple of visits I had with him, he was teaching me clay. He was on his wheel, which he spent a lot of his time, and he told me that he never sold anything that he made. And I think I think that really defines his character.
We're gonna sing a song called Misha Barak, which is a prayer for healing and peace, and Cynthia and Abe are gonna help sing it.
Of course, I don't understand any of the words. Just
Get close to
okay. All right. Please join in. It's on the back. Mishabera avotenu makor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishevera imotenu makor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Well, this is the time we all can participate. And I really encourage you to. It's up to you. This is the one chance to help. And a friend said to me today that providing a story about a loved one is a great gift to those who are remembering. So if you feel like it, I hope you follow after me. We're not in a hurry. I don't know if anything is happening after. This is a time to listen and talk. It was an awful time to die, at an awful time in history. But even in awful times, there are lessons. The first lesson is that to know when it's your time to let go is a strength and a courage. I've seen it before. My mom saw it before with many of her friends, and her mother, and her Aunt Dorothy, and many others. My dad had some anxiety, I think, for quite a while. He saw one by one his friends die. Jack Tomic, Sandy Moss, Sanford Peveroff, Brother Reitman, and on, Mike Jackson, Paul Colton. When a man has so many friends and is so loyal, this is what happens. And it was lonely being the last. But we who were left became his friend and tried our best to fill that void. I know he was ready because we had conversations. As many of you know, he lived his life in dreams the past 3-6 months and could recount dreams in great detail. I'm sure my mom heard the most. And most of these dreams had a theme. They were either of a man who was lost in a warehouse with meat hooks spinning and stuck and not being able to get out. A man who would go to a party, and often Jerry was there, and he would talk to Jerry, and often Jerry and often Ruthie were there, and no words came back. And I thought about that a lot. And I think what my dad realized was Jerry was okay, and he would keep that business going. And he was so proud of you, and so proud that it provided for your family. And it wasn't that you were being rude or mean. You were on your way. And he didn't need to offer anything anymore. He gave of him the best. And you keep it in your heart. There were many times he dreamed about camp. And he came up with wild, exotic schemes. And some of them were great. Some of them I'll use. Some of them were preposterous. But I'll still think about it. His mind was active in his dreams because he couldn't walk and move and see and hear, kept hurting himself. But his mind didn't quit. And that's a lesson to all of us. As we all know, his sight had really gone away to the point where if I'm as far as from my mom, he saw a shape. And he couldn't recognize, yet sometimes he still demanded to sign his checks or somehow could read information like, what's in Intuit today? Made 32 G's. He'd still somehow see that, even no matter how many times he screwed up his phone or called me by accident on FaceTime from the bathroom. And, what are you doing there? That was a nice talk. Happened last week. Now, through all this macular degeneration, we came to find out about these audio hallucinations, auditory. And this also is reflective of an amazing character of my father. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Avinu Malkeinu. He heard this in his mind for a good 3 months before I even knew about it. And I asked him, what is that like? Does it scare you? Does it cause you anxiety? Is it strange? Do you feel you're going crazy? And he said, no, it's wonderful. He has a terrific voice. In fact, let me see. Is he there right now? Let me see. No, I haven't heard from him for about a week. I said, maybe he went on vacation. He laughed. Turning your blindness into some sort of joy, like a radio. A week ago or two, I came home and we spent 3 hours on the deck having a good talk. We were trying to make a price for what family camp should be. I said, well, maybe $200 a night. That's okay. He said, what? Are you giving it away? Don't give it away. With him and the help of another friend, we came up with a different pricing structure. He was proud of that. And he kept pushing me to be successful. He said, listen, you're not a one-person social service agency. Let's make this work in a different way. And then he'd quickly say, it already has worked, and it doesn't matter, because you've helped many. The next time we talked, he said, listen, Joe, I'm in a very check-outable state. Don't be surprised if I check out any day now. I said, I know, Dad. I know. I see what's happening. So again, I asked, how does it feel? Are you scared? Are you anxious? He said, no. It's not so easy for me right now. I've had a good run. It's okay. I talked to him on Sunday. I don't know when he died, if it was Sunday or Monday night, it doesn't matter. But he had just fallen out of a chair. He called me all the time now. He never did when I was a child, but he started calling all the time. My mom, through some Herculean effort, got him back in the chair together, and they were always together. They were always a wonderful model. And he launched into a conversation. Yeah, I fell out of the bed. I was looking for my hearing aid. I couldn't find it, and somehow I rolled over. I hit my elbow. It really hurts. He was always hurting himself. When you told him to go to the doctor or take ibuprofen, it'll go away a couple of days, be all right. Apparently, he had made himself a homemade sling, which wasn't working. He always did that. He was a doctor, his own lawyer. He quickly turned the conversation back to me. How many people you got down at camp right now? 34. 34? That's terrific. Wow. A few seconds pass. That's about 6 G's, huh? I don't know how he calculated that. It was right. He then said, I'm a little tired. I think I want to go, but listen, Joe, if you go bankrupt, we'll bail you out of jail in 90 days. Those are the last words I heard from him, and it's perfect for me because it shows his support, his humor. What more do you want? He never stopped saying and being surprised that my body ain't the way it used to be. He's told me a few months ago, bad eyes, bad ears, weak, drooling, can't breathe, bad heart. He had been crawling in the backyard trying to fix something, and he thought he fractured his knee. Now he said, bad knee too. He said, we'll see what breaks down next. Now he would already be mad at me because he would say this is way too long. He would be saying, keep it short, baby, just the facts. He would have hated this. He would have also disputed many of the facts I was saying, telling me I had a very active imagination, which is a nice way to say I'm lying. He liked to say I embellished the truth. Sometimes that's true. He had a bad memory, though. There were lots of things that happened, such as I remember kicking Jenny on the green of a golf course, which he always denied, but I was there. He was a diplomat. He wouldn't have cared about the size of the crowd today or the limits, as he outlived his friends, but he didn't have a real need for credit, adoration. It came back to him all the time through interaction. I wrote some of this in my long-winded obituary, so I can skip it, but I do want to mention that my dad had a sense of adventure, and he was creative. There was a speech at a wedding once I remember him clearly saying, not very imaginative. He wasn't always the nicest. He just told his observations. While driving to Latin America, he trusted the world. He trusted in making connections. He loved to get lost on dead-end roads and see what happened. Much to my mother's chagrin, because I'm sure you hated that. But he passed that on to me. She's conducting. My dad liked the phone. He liked face-to-face conversations. If he was on the phone with a customer, it would kind of look like this. Okay, Bill, how many do you want? And he'd look over at me and wink a little and show me how he was talking. He liked to give stuff away, as Caleb said. He used to wake up in the morning, Sunday morning, and take a dozen bagels to Jack Tomic and Mike Jackson. When we watched TV on the couch, he'd slice up apples or dip into his private stock of nuts and slip them into our hands. He made loans to people, some where there was almost no chance of getting paid back, like Andy at the gas station on Route 6 and 45 for some bicycles. But he told me, never make a loan to anyone where you have any expectation you'll get the money back. You'll be disappointed. Marvin Berg, his oldest friend, rented space for years in his office and quite literally paid him in peanuts one year because that's what he did for a living. Passing out peanuts and pens and things like that. My dad gave away everything. He was a welcoming guy, sometimes too welcoming. I believe he invited the entire labor and delivery class into your room at the hospital. Come on in. Sorry, Mom. My dad was a tough, savvy, creative, trusting, ethical guy. Did you get a live one today? Did you know Jenny did 13 G's of business in Michigan? He took such pleasure in hearing about this. No, I'm sorry. You have your turn. This is not acceptable. I will focus in on the it. I will try to respect you, but you will respect me. I mean, she told me I was the rabbi. I've never seen anyone interrupt the rabbi, but I'll move along. My dad was essentially an optimist. My mother was essentially suspicious. My dad was never depressed. He had a very difficult time understanding mental illness. And coming from the Schnittlinger family, which we call the Schnittlinger curse, of many males having that issue, including me, that was hard sometimes. He just didn't understand how that could be. But he gave people the benefit of the doubt. When I was about to be divorced, he said, keep a stiff upper lip. I said, all I need is a hug. He gave me a hug. He wasn't always warm and fuzzy. Woman, stop hacking me. Nope. At Thanksgiving, he said the food tasted like cardboard. He had lost his sense of smell and taste. Look at that zucchini, something out of nothing. Cottage, just like Canada. Suit yourself. He didn't have big hobbies, just friends. I did 12 bags of leaves today. Did you know? He wore his old, nasty slip-on shoes, his red, white, and blue velour shirt, walking around with his crack showing. He never talked about work, except for the friends he made, Wakashima, Hiro, Oguma, Bill Lynch, even Nelson, who jilted him. He cried in later years at any speech. He went fishing with cruddy pieces of an eighth of an inch worm, all by himself on the dock, happy as a clam, walking through the West Side Market, talking to everyone. 3 of those, 6 of these, 10 of those, with his Greek fisherman's hat. Maury, take your dog home if you don't like it, on Thanksgiving. Like to talk like a gangster. What's shaking, baby? Any action today? I'm disappointed in you, Barbara, for interrupting your son. You might say it that way. Yeah, he swore at Trump. He had outbursts. He left the world better. It was never about him. He was not the show. To conclude, I got very lucky with 2 glimpses into my dad's life. One was when I went to work for him. He said, yeah, you can come over, push a broom around. That was my job description. I went on a sales trip for him, and I was in Managua, Nicaragua. I was going to a place called the House of Hose. It's owned by a fellow named Senor Vargas. I got into the office. First, I had to find it 3 blocks to the east of the movie theater, which had been destroyed already, 2 blocks to the north of the light blue house. I came in, I sat down. Don Vargas gave me a special cup of coffee, and he looked at me very hard in the eyes and said, your dad was a senor. I heard this over and over from people I didn't know. The second glimpse I got was in the past 5 years. I owned my own business. He was so interested. He argued with me about the business model, which was a shitty model, I knew. He made me better, questioned me, came up with ideas. I came to his house, I showed him everything, and it energized him in a way that I guess was helpful. At the 100-year ceremony of Camp Roosevelt, he sat there on a rock while 120 people sat around a campfire. He sat by himself on a little rock by a tree. I used to think, as he looked out, he was thinking, I did all this. Without me, no one would be here. I realized lately, that's the last thing he was thinking. He was looking at the smiling faces. He was happy he had some part of that. And most of all, he was proud of me, that I could do something with my life, and he helped, all because of him. He put me in that spot. Someday I want to be looking at my children, having that proud, and I know I will. Dad, I aspire to your model of life and your behavior. I will continue to work. I will continue to love and care for your wife and your kids, Jenny and Rose. I'll also think and stop and think about when I behave wrong in the world and when things get tough. And I'll continue to make my own mistakes, consult and argue with you in my mind, and scheme together about how to do our little part to make it all a better place. Today, a good friend and I dreamed of building a long porch at camp in front of our old lodge. And on that porch, one will be able to look out and gaze at the lake, rock back and kibitz, laugh and tease and drink and dream. You see, my dad encouraged me to believe that I had the ability to accomplish my dreams. And I plan to build a porch, Harold's porch, where more conversations like that will occur, where relationships will develop and life will go on, rock by rock, in a broken down chair. You gotta have a vision, right, Dad? I love you. Now, if you want to speak, you may come up.
So I wasn't planning to say anything today, but I want to tell you that I'm very proud of my son. And I'm very glad that he has a chance to say in front of others how he feels about his father. I don't know how many sons have the privilege and the time to be able to do that. And sometimes he gets carried away a little, but it was a very good carrying away. I did not have to rescue him. He is his own person. I also want to just say that 62 years and 7 months ago, Harold and I got married. I was a mess. Our closest friend who had introduced us had given me 4 Milltown, so I was really drugged while I was having the service. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was quite inappropriate. After the wedding, I went to my room. Harold decided to have a good time. And he stayed downstairs and enjoyed himself. That was a long time ago. I've learned a lot from living with him for 62 years and 7 months. He taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. Taught me how to be successful. He reined me in when he didn't like my ideas about raising children. He made me strong. So I'm telling you today, we don't need to mourn. We are going to celebrate Harold's life and all the things we learned from him. I am not going to spend my days crying. I am going to be grateful that he was able to live at home, die at home, the 2 of us together. And I want everybody here to celebrate his life because we have a lot to learn from him. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak, but if they do, they can come right up. Come on, Ruby. Can you hear me? My dad was the best man I knew. He was incredibly kind, supportive, honest, intelligent, with a remarkable work ethic. A man of extraordinary integrity, whose strong moral compass guided him every day of his life. A man who loved his family and his friends. And he showed this regularly, sometimes with his words, but more often with his actions. When I visualize him, I see him smiling with that twinkle in his eye. You all know what I'm talking about. Until very recently, he always exuded a positive and optimistic energy. He saw the best in people, and he gave everyone the benefit of the doubt, even when maybe not deserved. He was generous to a fault, and he somehow felt responsible for so many of us. He was a mensch.
He and I always had a special, close relationship. Maybe because I was so much younger than my siblings and I grew up almost like an only child. His nickname for me was usually Ropes, but also sometimes Imelda, referencing my love of shoes. I started calling him Hal after he mentioned one day that he actually didn't like the nickname Hal. But most often I just called him Daddy. Growing up, we had all sorts of private jokes, secrets. In their house on Portland, there was a shelf with a small Japanese statue of Hote, the god of happiness, contentment, where he'd regularly hide candy, like chocolate-covered raisins, gummy bears, or spore candy bars, which were his favorite. It was our secret stash, as he called it, and he had strict instructions not to tell my mom, but I'm pretty sure she always knew. And just recently, Nate and I started that tradition, have a secret place, which Caleb and Mike don't know about, the same thing. He took me on an amazing trip when I was in college to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, just the two of us. We ate exotic foods. We won a few $100s at the fanciest casino in San Juan, which he let me keep. We visited one of his Dominican customers who took us to a polo match. It was important to him to take each of his children on a special trip. He told me and encouraged me to continue this tradition with my own children someday. When I got sick, he was always there with words of encouragement. Despite his own physical ailments, he chose to focus on me, my recovery. He promised me that my life still had many chapters yet to be written and that I would be okay. He just knew it. And I believed him because he had been my own personal superhero since the day I was born, and he always told the truth. When I think about him, I know it was the simple things in life that made him incredibly happy. He loved food and eating, cherries from the West Side Market, coconut bars from Davis Bakery, honey roasted peanuts, corned beef sandwiches, patty melts from yours truly, and tomatoes and giant zucchinis from his garden. He loved telling you about something really delicious that he had eaten, and he was excited to share every detail of his culinary experience with you. On the other hand, he was always very vocal about what he didn't like to eat. He thought cilantro was the work of the devil, and just hearing the word pesto, which Cynthia often made, would completely set him off. He always felt the need to grade other people's cooking, which many of us experience, and he was an incredibly tough critic. It was rare that you would get a grade higher than a B+. My noodle kugel was the one thing that consistently got an A from him, and I took that as the highest of compliments. Meanwhile, my mom's cooking had a historical average of about a B-, and lately he would tell you that it was on a downward trajectory. Other things that made him happy were riding too fast on his lawnmower while cutting the grass at the cottage, going out to lunch with his high school crew, installing skylights to make the rooms in his house brighter, one of his obsessions, planning his annual transportation-themed photo shoot for the Salazar holiday card, watching Rachel Maddow, going fishing, working in his vegetable garden, doing ceramics, cleaning out the fridge when my mom wasn't looking, deep sixing everything in sight, as he'd say, and checking his stocks, as Joe mentioned, especially Intuit. He was obsessed with Intuit, having bought it for under about $5 a share. He called it last week a stock of a lifetime. He'd be happy today that last time I checked, it was up $7. He would have called me about that. Mostly, though, he loved spending time with his family and friends, and that's what made him the happiest. He spent much of his life traveling the world, but he was always most content at home with his family and dogs. And he loved sharing his homes with everyone he knew. Almost every friend I had was at some point invited to the cottage, given a boat ride by my dad, and told the history of roaming shores. He loved having parties. The more the merrier. No one was ever excluded. Leading up to these parties, he was always stressed out and he'd get incredibly bossy, as all of us know. Usually he was focused on where everyone would park, but they followed his signs to the barn. And if we would have enough beef tenderloin or salmon for everyone to have some of both. And the shrimp, there always had to be a huge bowl of shrimp with cocktail sauce. But once the party started, he was always in his element, Mr. Social Butterfly, making sure to spend quality time with each of his guests. And at the end of the party, he'd always pull us aside for a debrief. Wasn't that a great party, he'd say? And the food, oh my God, those people loved the beef tenderloin. My dad had a love-hate relationship with technology, as Joe mentioned. Using the remote control was a daily battle. And over the past 5 years, he locked himself out of his Merrill Lynch online account about 500 times. Just ask Denise. He tried to learn to use email, the internet, and his iPhone, which he thought was the most amazing of devices. But this relationship with technology ended up being more hate than love, and it became a source of much frustration. He called me about once a week to let me know that something was once again wrong with his phone. Usually he had somehow managed to turn off the brightness or put it in airplane or do not disturb mode, but he swore up and down that it had happened magically on its own. So I would come and reset it for him and give him another iPhone 101 lesson. And over the past few months, I was trying to get him to use Siri on his phone because he wanted, again, to be able to check his stocks, no longer able to see the ticker on the TV. I gave him strict instructions to say, hey, Siri, to get things started. But you know, Dad, he was creating his own unique salutations like, oh, hello there, Siri, or good morning, Siri, or using his pseudo-British accent, calling her Sari or Sarah. So needless to say, he and Siri's relationship was doomed from the start. These last few years, my dad's body was starting to fail. Macular degeneration stole his vision, and with it, his ability to read the paper or watch CNN. He got tired walking from his bedroom to the kitchen, and this completely perplexed him. He'd always ask me why I thought this was happening. And I'd say, well, Dad, you're 93, that's why. It's almost like he forgot how old he was, and that being in one's 90s was like a common thing. He spent his entire life so incredibly self-sufficient, never having to ask others for help. You see, he was the one doing the helping. That's why it was so heartbreaking to see him like this. Losing his strength and needing help, but reluctant to ask for it and adamant that he was okay. He wanted to do things on his own terms in his own way, and somehow he was able to do that almost until the end. You could say that his death was also on his own terms. He knew that things were getting hard, really hard. It was hard for him to move, hard to breathe, hard to see. He was so very tired, and maybe he just knew it was time to check out, as he liked to say. He was no longer up for this challenge, as he liked to say, called life. My mom keeps saying we should be celebrating today because my dad had everything he ever wanted and more. She told me that yesterday. 93 years of a full and incredible life. 62 years and 7 months of a supportive and loving marriage. 3 children, 4 grandchildren that he made certain would have everything they ever needed and then some. He loved my kids and always told me what great potential they had. He told me he knew they would do great things with their lives and he was proud of how I had raised them. So together we will work diligently to carry on his legacy, to make him proud, to leave the world a little better than how we found it. And we will imagine that he is not gone, but just in a different place, where his body is once again strong, and his eyes are twinkling with 20/20 vision, where he can sit in his pottery wheel and throw a perfect bowl that's not too heavy, where he can tend to his garden and grow tomatoes, giant zucchinis, and the occasional watermelon, where he can be reunited and laugh with old friends, and where he can sit on his dock at sunset with an endless supply of worms and a fishing rod whose line will never get tangled. We love you, Dad. Hi, everybody. We gotta get up.
I wasn't going to talk because I have a strong sense I'll just break down, but I just want to say a short thing. I feel like everyone else did, so I got to say something too. I had the great privilege over the past, well, recent times, but especially last month, spending a lot of time with Harold doing ceramics. I made some videos of this. He couldn't see really hardly anything and was creating incredible chaos, but I knew that it was his greatest pleasure. I'm fine. I'm fine. I knew it was his greatest pleasure. He told me last week, you know, this is keeping me alive. Thank you. In short, because I think you've heard a lot and probably more, maybe something else after me, I'm a lucky person. We're a lucky family. That's it.
I'm just gonna tell a short story, a fish story. I was very fortunate to fish with Harold very often, quite a bit up in Canada. And one time I can't remember where we were or when it was, but we'd been out for probably 3-4 days, starting early in the morning, all day long. In for dinner, back out at night. We were probably totally delirious. And this day we were not having any luck. And we'd fished all day. We'd used everything in our box. We were in the back of the bay. Harold goes in his box and he pulls out this nice spoon. He goes, "This'll work." And instead of attaching it to his line, he just flicked it into the water. So that's the story. And for Harold, I brought him a lure. And I'm gonna send it home with him.
There's going to be so much in common with what you've heard, and I swear to you I didn't speak with anyone who's already spoken. This past year, we all knew Uncle Harold was making the best of a lousy situation. His mind was there, but his eyes and ears were going. He got winded as he shuffled 50 feet, and all that tended to steer him toward isolation. Aunt Barbara did everything possible to keep Harold engaged. And I can attest that as of 2 weeks ago, when I invited myself over for an unplanned visit and dinner, Harold, despite all these nagging infirmities, stayed with us step for step as we discussed all the craziness that was going on in today's world. Last summer, my sister Peggy and I took Harold up to Maine, spent time with his brother, our father. When they were kids, having to sleep in the same bed, Dad offered to share the bed 50-50 with Harold, who was so excited until Dad told him that the older brother would get the 2 inner quarters of the bed, and Harold would get the outer quarters on each side. Last summer was the last time they got to see each other, but that was enough as they spoke several times each week over all the years. We know how much Dad would want to be here, but as I noted before, these are strange times. We also all know we've been blessed to have Harold and Barbara in our lives. The more so, the better. There just aren't enough superlatives to describe either of them, as they have spread love and joy all around over the past 60 plus years. But I must return to Harold, as this day in service is to honor his life and legacy. And Barbara, I could go on about you, but I have to save those words. You're still with us, and I hope it stays that way a long time. Like Rosie said, Harold was a mensch, a one of a kind, with a heart and generosity that seemed to create a glow about it. I've never known a kinder, sweeter, more giving man who would literally offer to give you the shirt off his back, the pants off his legs, the shoes off his feet. Who knows how many whatevers he gave to those who needed them. I do know that when we were up in Maine last summer, we discovered he only brought one pair of pants, some khakis. Said they were the only ones that fit. But I really think he gave all the others away. We tried to get him some at LL Bean, but could only find another single pair with his waist and inseam. They were khakis too. In so many ways, Harold Sr. was angelic. He was my uncle, my friend, my advisor, my confidant. While his memories will live on within us from generation to generation, he is irreplaceable. And we're going to have to figure out how to go on without him. But he will always be with us. And every time I drink a cup of coffee in one of his mugs, or make a salad in one of his bowls, I will think to myself, thank you, Uncle Harold, for showing us how to live life and leading by examples. If you're lucky, a Harold Mendez comes along once in a lifetime. We were lucky.
I think I know most of you here, but my name is Jerry Kagan, and I was lucky to work with Harold for nearly 15 years. Harold was my mentor. He taught me the export business and showed me how to run a successful business by trusting your instincts and always doing the right thing. When we made mistakes, we always owned them and did what was right, even when it came at a great expense to ourselves. Although Harold stopped working at Salazar back in 2005, the principles and the ethics I learned from him continue to guide our business today. When Harold decided to retire from Salazar, he basically gave me the business, and he changed my life. Harold was part businessman, part investment expert, and part social worker. I watched him over the years as he cared for so many people in need, whether it was a relative struggling with mental illness or a friend who was in financial need. Over the years, we traveled overseas together. We celebrated big orders together with takeout food. We packed thousands of boxes, but best of all, we spent countless hours together, just the two of us talking about life. I was so lucky to have Harold in my life, and I will miss my friend.
I'm Eileen Shapiro. I've been an honorary family member of the Mendeses since 1967, 53 years ago, when I met Jenny, my oldest friend, my dearest friend. And I would like to say Harold was like a father to me. I loved him like a father, and I feel like in many ways like a daughter. He was the gentlest of souls. I can't disagree with one thing that I heard here today. I could only embellish it, in fact, but I want to share a short story about the flip side of Harold, which is that Jenny had said to me once, Harold never read manuals. He would push buttons, he would flip switches, he just would kind of go full steam ahead to try and figure things out. And when we moved into our house, he was in my kitchen with a drill, helping us to hang like 100 blue and white plates that my mother and Barbara, through their house sailing mania, had accumulated. So I don't know what happened, but Harold's drilling away, and the next thing I know, he drilled a hole in my cupboard. And I'm like, I don't know how it happened. I guess my back was turned. I don't know how it happened. And so I have this hole in my cupboard, and for a while Mark and I are like, what the heck, what happened? And then we kind of started to laugh about it, and then we found this little plastic fly, and it just fit perfectly in this hole, so it looked like there was a fly on the cupboard. Eventually we had it fixed, and I have to say, Harold has left me with another hole in my heart. I know Barbara says we should be celebrating, and there certainly is much to celebrate. But boy, am I going to miss him.
This is going to be hard for me. My name's Peggy, and Uncle Harold was my favorite uncle ever in the whole world, and I will miss him sorely. So about 3 or 4 years ago, they had to move out of their two homes, one at the cottage and the one in out in Moreland Hills. And they asked me to come and help them get rid of their stuff, which I do professionally. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really a lot of fun. So I spent a lot of time cleaning out the cottage and cleaning out the main house. And in that cleaning out, I found this index card in a book. And I read it, and I said, oh my goodness, this is really Uncle Harold. And I kept this card, and I put masking tape on it, and it's been sitting on my cupboard. Then I read it every day for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's a quote that somebody hand wrote on an index card, and the author is a fellow named Thomas Carlyle, who I looked up. He was a Scottish essayist and satirist and historian, and his work was highly influential during the Victorian era. And he was very famous for his quotations. And if you Google him, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of his essays and his books and his quotations. And this is the one that was like that I found on the card. And when I showed it to him, when I found it, he just looked at me and said, "C'est la vie," which is what said a lot. See deep enough, and you see musically. The heart of nature being everywhere music, if you can only reach it. Apropos, because Uncle Harold has been hearing music for the last 6 months and telling everyone. So I will keep this forever. He was always a guy who listened to the music of life, especially with me. He held my hand when I needed him. He was really my friend. And I want to thank you, Rosie and Jenny and Joe, for sharing your father with me my whole life, because I really needed him. And he was always there for me. And I just looked into it. It's a 304.56. And
That is good. That is very good.
Right now, we'd like Eileen to come back and recite a Hebrew prayer, please. This is first is Eileen and then is Leah. So if you could come up, Eileen, it's all set for you.
Al Molei Rachamim, Shachayim, Amromim, Chamse, Menucha, Nechona, Al Kanpe, Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim, Utchorim, Kezohar, Haraki A Mazhirim, Et Nishmat, Harold Bernard Mendes, Shehalach LaOlama, Ba'avor Shenodvzu, Tzedakah, Ba'ad Hazkarat Nishmata, Began Aiden Tehei Menuchata, Lachain Ba'al HaRachamim Yastirha, B'Seitir Kenachav LaOlamim, Vayitzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, Betanu Ach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, Benomar, Amen. God, full of mercy, who dwells in the heights, provide a sure rest upon the divine presence's wings, within the range of the holy, pure, and glorious, whose shining resemble the skies, to the soul of Harold Bernard Mendes, son of Isaac Mendes Cohen, for a charity was given to the memory of his soul. Therefore, the Master of Mercy will protect him forever from behind the hiding of his wings, and will tie his soul with the rope of life. The everlasting is his heritage, and he shall rest peacefully upon his lying place. And let us say, Amen.
So I just want to introduce my cousin Leah Kagan, who is part of a beautiful family related on my mother's side family that came here when Leah was 10 years old. And she has the strength of thousands. And she is a beautiful person, and we love her and everyone in the family, her sister, her brothers, her brother-in-laws, her children, everyone. And she is going to say, because I know I can always count her, is going to say the mourner's prayer for us. So I think everybody's supposed to stand for the mourner's prayer. Yitkadal v'yitkadash ve'raba ba'alma divrei kirisei ve'yamlich malchusei v'chayefon v'yamrifon v'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael v'agalah v'yizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shama rabba v'vorach l'olam v'obei v'oya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitnomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekucha brichu la'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
For some reason, I've been singing this song a lot this summer. When I've been thinking about it, sometimes I hear my dad singing it to me, the lyrics. Sometimes I hear myself singing it to someone else. Sometimes I hear a friend singing it to me. Maybe you'll hear some of the same things. Yeah, the words are on the back if you'd like to sing. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. If we are wise, we know that all is too far. Lean on me when you're not strong. Out in your friend, I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till you're gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road and I'll say hello. If you just call me, just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just might have the problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on me when you're not strong. And I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. And I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, boy. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. At this time, I can't really remember the reason why we do this, but Cynthia, our resident Jew, will explain. Go to the microphone.
I do this. I look things up. So I believe that by placing a little soil, a little earth inside on the casket, that we are showing that we are remaining with Harold until the end. It is a way of keeping him company. Am I right, Ruthie? That's what I read. That's what I read. That's what the internet's about. So Southern Baptist can pretend she knows the thing. So so we have a soil. Joe said it had to be real soil from a real backyard, so it's from our backyard. And there's a cup that Harold made, and you can scoop some up and place it inside. And there's hand sanitizer, because that's very important to us, that after you've used the cup, that you please sanitize your hands so that you don't carry off the germs that came before. Okay?
So before we start, my dad was insatiably trying to make a cup for every child at camp. Last week I told him I was giving the people coming this summer gift bags. I told him what was in it. He said, well, you give him a cup. I said, no, I'm giving him a t-shirt. I'm saving the cups for next year because they're special. So I'm going to put one in there just like Mark did. There's one for everybody to use. Come up when you feel like it and wash your hands.